Welcome to this latest podcast. My name is Chris Littlewood. I'm a research fellow in the Clinical Trials Unit here at the School of Health and Related Research. And I'm here today with Morgan West for the second time. Morgan is now a past student on the Masters in Clinical Research. And when we met and spoke last December now, Morgan was at the start of her dissertation journey. And at that time, Morgan was interested in exploring the barriers and facilitators of evidence-based practice in clinical physiotherapy education. And when we spoke last time, she shared some of her concerns relating to the practicalities of carrying out the research, particularly in relation to recruitment and the logistics of doing the study. So, as I mentioned, now Morgan is at the end of that journey, and we're returning to discuss how things went. So Morgan, welcome.
Thank you.
Did you achieve what you set out to achieve?
I did. I completed my research and was able to achieve a distinction grade. So I was really, really pleased. I was pleased with the fact that I actually got to the end of it and handed something in that I felt was good quality and you know, displayed what I wanted to and what I wanted to set out with.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What did you find in your research?
I was actually pleasantly surprised. I think you always, if you choose a research topic because it's something that you're interested in, I think you do, as much as you're not supposed to, go in with some preconceived ideas of what you think you might find. And I was really surprised actually at the variability of the subjects that I had and how I would go from one extreme to another with their findings. Ultimately, I think what I found is that one of the biggest both facilitators and barriers to students' integration and application of evidence-based practice whilst on placement was the example that they're shown from their clinical educators. Those students who saw and were interacting with and experienced their clinical educators either talking about or implementing the evidence-based to their clinical practice found it something that A, they were interested in, and B, they did an awful lot of and felt they gained something from. Perhaps those students who did less and saw less had more of a negative perception of it and used it an awful lot less. So It was amazing the difference that would make to how the students felt about it.
Good. So something useful, something that helps people think differently about their approach. Great. Did your initial concerns about recruitment and you managing the study, did they materialise?
In parts, yes. The logistics of finding somewhere to do a qualitative interview is quite difficult. I was very, very blessed and very lucky that the students that I recruited from Sheffield Hallam were fantastic and really amenable and, you know, jumping up and down to help, which was great. And I did manage to find a little room that you could book through speaking to the IT KICS department and speaking to the library department. They were really helpful. So I did find this little golden room that I could use, and the students were great at coming to it. Recruitment-wise, it was strange, and I assume this is always what happens. I would have a little patch where I'd get 3 or 4 come all at once, and I'd be fitting them in and trying to get them transcribed, and then I'd go through a little dead zone and I'd think, oh no, there's no more coming, and then all of a sudden another couple of emails would come through. And I think the time of year was difficult because they were A, finishing up their studies, and B, a lot of them were sort of finishing and packing and doing and checking their emails a little bit more intermittently. So yeah, there was that side of things that I think if it had been more within term time, sort of when they were absorbed in it, perhaps it would have all come in a big rush. But I got there in the end. So
So you had support from the people you were recruiting from at Sheffield Hallam, and you had the necessary infrastructure here at the university to deliver. And you also came up with a novel idea about how to collect data as well, because initially you thought about face-to-face.
Yeah.
And you changed your approach.
Well, because I knew the time of year that I would be doing it and that some of these students will have gone home, I had a little look round the sort of previous evidence base into sort of telephone interviews, and although they are a great way of collecting and a much more logistical way often of collecting data, you miss the body language cues and you know, that face-to-face side of things. So I had a look at using sort of video chat, basically Skype or FaceTime and those kind of things. And there was a surprising number of those students were well up for that. I think the generation that's coming through, these guys are all 21, pretty much. It was so much easier for them to do that. So it was about half and half in the end, half actual face-to-face and half of them via that kind of video chat medium, which worked really well. It was really easy to do.
So, I mean, it sounds like things, on the whole, did go well.
Yeah, I got there.
Absolutely, you got there and did well. But you were open to ideas, you changed your approach as you went along, you were flexible. But was there anything that didn't go particularly well?
I found that I was really organised in my transcription and tried to make sure that after each time I'd done an interview, I got it transcribed because I didn't want that sort of hanging over me. The biggest downside that I found is that I had another big assignment due in as I was doing my interviews. So at that point my time management wasn't great, and I was either always writing transcriptions or always doing this assignment, and I do wish that I had been a little bit more organised in when I'd planned my interviews and stuff. But then I think sometimes you've got to go with what works for the participant, haven't you? And if that's the only time they can do, that's the only time they can do. So I found that was hard, that was difficult, and coming at it towards the end, again, just making sure I was organised enough to be delegating my time properly and realising how much work I had left and how long things would take. I think as far as the practicalities of the study went, I was very lucky in that I don't think there was anything that went wrong. I did my interviews, collected my data, everything was transcribed. There were no issues from that point. It was more just me and my write-up, I think, and making sure that I was being organised with it and using, my dissertation supervisor where needed for that bit of help and that bit of engagement.
Certainly, I mean, you were very organised from the start. You had milestones to meet and you met them. But I think the write-up, this is possibly for most people the biggest piece of work they've done. And it can be hard to keep going, can't it?
Yeah. I mean, you do hit a point, and you hit those points where you feel like you've been doing the same thing and the same chapter for weeks, and you just feel like you're actually words not getting any more on the page, perhaps 100 a day, but yet the work that you've put into it. I mean, my spare room was just a massive pile of post-it notes because I was doing my framework, so it was all these different coloured, and it was like that for 4 days, and Dave wasn't allowed to touch it, and that was because that was hours of work, but actually I wrote nothing. So I think it's seeing the wood for the trees and realising that you are making huge progress with all these hours that you spend doing it. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's words that you've written.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's my experience. Sometimes the writing flows, other times there are other processes going on building up to writing, so I think you've just got to accept that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Build that flexibility in. So you're at the end of your MSc journey and the end of your dissertation. There might be some people listening to this who are contemplating coming on the MSc here at ScHARR, or there might be some people doing the MSc who are just beginning their dissertation journey. What advice would you give to them, if any?
The people who are contemplating coming on the MSc, my advice would be do it. I absolutely loved it, and it was everything I wanted it to be. I think, make no bones, it's hard work, and there's a lot of work to it. The structure and the way I did it in a part-time basis gave me still my clinical time to do my job and, concentrate on that and go into work mode, and my study time, and I really liked that balance. I know some people do it full-time and just engage with the academic side. But yeah, definitely go for it. Use all the resources that are there, whether that's the library staff who are great or whether it's people within ScHARR, any personal tutors and dissertation supervisors you're given, engage with them and use them. Those that are doing their dissertations now, keep going. You do get to the end. If you have an idea that you like and you're interested in, try and run with it if it's feasible, because I think that is a big part of it. I think if I'd picked something because it made sense and I wasn't particularly interested in, I definitely would have lost motivation and just some of the hours I spent I would have given up with. So I think you've got to be interested in your topic as a start and clear on what it is and clear on how you meet the aims of your proposed research question. One of my biggest pieces of advice is definitely use your dissertation supervisor. Go to your supervision meetings, make plans, make little miniature deadlines. They can move, they can be flexible. Real life happens around doing this. And there were times where I had to say, I know I said I'd get something to you by Friday, it's going to be the week after, is that all right? And as long as you work together, that works fine. I think try and plan your time, but don't be too strict on yourself, because there are certain things, if you've never done this before, that you don't realise how long something might take. So you think, oh, well, 3 days to do that, and it takes you a week and a half. And that's fine, as long as you're working towards the actual deadline. I think don't worry too much.
Yeah, that will be one of my reflections working with you. I remember you asking me quite frequently, set me a deadline, give me a deadline, and you were very good at communicating whether you'd meet that, how things were going, and I think that worked well for the both of us, didn't
Yeah,
it?
because obviously what you've got to bear in mind with your dissertation supervisor, they're not sat there waiting for your work doing nothing else. They have a job. So if you're having to shift the deadlines, you've got to work together just to check that that your proposed new date works for them as well.
Yeah. Okay, so my final question, what next for you?
Well, I have actually just submitted one of my assignments from the MSc for publication, which is really exciting, and hopefully that'll all come to fruition. And my plan is also to submit my dissertation. So the overall plan for me really is to sort of build on my clinical career and clinical development and my research experience that I've gained through this MSc, and hopefully sort of develop my own research that will contribute to the profession as a whole as a physiotherapist.